In the last chapter, we learned about planning, and we learned about the different types of plans businesses have: strategic, tactical, and operational. In this chapter, we're going to be diving deeper into strategy and strategic planning. So let's start by looking at some of the terminology that we need to know. A strategy is a comprehensive plan for accomplishing an organization's goal. And strategic management is the way we approach these business opportunities and challenges so that we can formulate and implement effective strategies. So let's define what an effective strategy is. Strategies that promote a superior alignment between the organization and its environment and the achievement of its goals. So this, again, builds from stuff we've previously learned about our environments. So our strategies need to align with the organization and its environment. So we have to understand the environment we're working within. We have to understand the general and task environment, and of course our internal environment, and then come up with strategies that align the organization with these environments. As we put together our strategy, we want to look at our distinctive competencies, scope, and resource deployment. Now let's look at each one individually. Distinctive competence is something an organization does exceptionally well. Let's look at Apple. It's clear that their distinctive competence is that they can create well-designed and user-friendly products like no one else in the market. When we talk about scope, it's the range of markets that an organization competes in. Some organizations only compete in, say, one market and sell one type of thing. Other companies might decide to be in several different types of markets. So how far-reaching is our organization? We can look at two similar companies and see the difference here. So let's look at and compare Hershey's with the Mars Company. Hershey's is a confectionery company. So you know Hershey's chocolate and candy bars, but they have products for baking or snacking. They have syrups and toppings, but it's all confectionery products. By contrast, the Mars Company has confectionery products like M&Ms and Snickers and gum like Orbit gum, but they also carry pet care products like Pedigree dog food, and they have cat food, and they also have other types of food that they sell. That is a difference in the range of markets in which those two organizations compete. Lastly, we have decisions about resource deployment. How will an organization distribute its resources across the areas in which it competes? So if we have different businesses running, are we keeping all the funds from one company reinvested in that company, or do we take profits from a company that's doing very well and distribute it across other markets to maybe build them up? So these are decisions made when we're putting together our strategy. Now let's look at two types of strategic alternatives. We are a company that is only in one industry or market. Our business level and our corporate level strategy are essentially the same. We wouldn't distinguish between the two. But if we are a larger corporation that has several businesses in different industries or markets, we would have both a corporate level strategy that would define the mix of industries and markets that we're into. And then for each of those industries or markets, we would have a business level strategy. I think it's helpful to look at an example for this to make some sense. So let's look at Yum Brands. If you're not familiar with Yum, Yum has these different businesses: KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and the newest is Habit Burger Grill. Click on company and we can see that Yum's mission is to build the world's most loved, trusted, and fastest growing restaurant brands. We are evolving KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and Habit Burger Grill into iconic, distinctive, and relevant global brands. This represents the corporate level strategy. Now the business level strategy would be individual based on the different businesses that we have. So KFC, while still following this overall corporate strategy of building up each of these businesses into iconic, distinctive, and relevant brands, they're also about growth. But how they do it and their vision, individual vision for each company is going to differ slightly, but still fall under this corporate level strategy. So Yum's corporate level strategy is represented by this, and then each of these different brands would have a business level strategy. We can also distinguish between deliberate and emergent strategies. So a deliberate strategy is a plan chosen and implemented to support specific goals. It's the result of a rational, systematic, and planned process of strategy formulation and implementation. So this is what, as a manager or, and a top manager, this is what we want to see. We want to plan. We want to have, look at our environments, make sure they align with our strategy, and we have this deliberate strategy put in place that we've gone through a rational thought process for. But sometimes that doesn't happen, and instead we might have an emergent strategy, which is a pattern of action that develops over time, either because we don't have goals or missions, or despite having goals and missions. So what I like to do is I like to give Volkswagen as an example, and we can look at two different models of the Volkswagen Beetle. A lot of people don't realize how long this original Beetle has been around for. It was begun in 1938. This was actually designed and commissioned. It was designed to be the people's car. That's what Volkswagen actually stands for. Volks is folks, people, and wagon is car. So it was the people's car, and it was something that Adolf Hitler wanted for Germany. And so actually Ferdinand Porsche is the one who designed it, along with Hitler. So this original car, it had a very deliberate strategy. It was meant to be an affordable car that everyone could own. Back at that time frame, the only cars available in Germany, I believe, were luxury cars that were too expensive for ordinary people to buy, and most people got around on motorcycles. So this original Beetle was designed to be affordable. It was actually the price of a motorcycle, or around that price, and it was mass produced. It was mass produced to be cheap, to be easy to fix, to have interchangeable parts, and that's how it was produced and became very popular. Of course, its popularity faded off over the years, and interestingly, I thought it actually stopped before this, but I think the last one of that style came off the production line in 2003 in a Mexico plant. The new version of the Beetle that we see here has an interesting history as well. The new Beetle actually emerged at the 1994 North American International Auto Show. It was a concept car, and there was, no real intention for it to be mass produced. But, at the car shows, they always come up with some interesting designs and, to get people's attention and see what interests them. But the reaction to this concept car was so great that they went and did production design approvals. And I think the first one came off the line in 1997. And the car was, very different. So it was an emergent strategy. It wasn't planned out that they were going to start producing this car. But because of things that developed over time, because they saw this reaction and they saw people were interested, they went ahead and got this into production. But it's a very different car than the original one. The original one was mass produced as affordable as it could be. The new one was much more expensive. It could be customized, and it became very popular. So the deliberate strategy, I hope we can see the distinction here. The first one was very deliberate. The second one was an emergent strategy. Now let's look at SWOT analysis. This is a tool that can be used to help us with our strategy. As we see on the top, you always start with your mission statement. What is our purpose? And then we do this SWOT analysis. So we look at our internal strengths and weaknesses. So under strengths, we list our distinctive competencies. And then we look at our external opportunities and threats. From that point, then we can come up with these strategies. A good strategy that will come out of a SWOT analysis are those that support the mission and exploit our opportunities and strengths, neutralize threats, and avoid our weaknesses. So, the key thing here to keep in mind is when we're doing a SWOT analysis, internal analysis is about the company. These are the things we can control, right? They're things that we choose to do and we control. The external analysis, opportunities and threats, are outside of our control. So going back to chapter 3, we need to understand our environments, our external environments. So we need to understand the general environment, what's going on with the economy. Are there laws changing? What are the trends going on socioculturally? We have to understand the relationship with our suppliers, our competitors, and know what's going on. From this point, once we come up with all our strengths, our weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, from there, we come up with a strategy. And our good strategy is going to be one that supports our mission and exploits opportunities and our strengths, neutralizes threats, and avoids our weaknesses. This is probably easier to understand with an example. So we'll use RVCC as an example. One other thing I want to point out, when we're talking about opportunities, this is one of those terms that in using it in a SWOT analysis, it has a very specific meaning. We might say, expanding our company is a great opportunity. Well, yes, that's very true, but expanding our company would not fall under opportunities in this SWOT analysis because it's something we control, okay? Expanding our company would actually be a strategy that might come out of this analysis, okay? So opportunities for terms of a SWOT analysis are going to be things out of our control happening in our external environment. So let's see, an opportunity for the community college would be the economy, right? The economy can be an opportunity because when the economy isn't doing great, we tend to see more enrollment at the community college. Or the economy could be a threat if the economy is doing really well and people can afford to and decide to go to four-year schools instead. All right, so we can see how the economy could be either an opportunity or a threat. A common threat for any business would be competition, right? What is the competition doing? Now, in your internal analysis, looking at your strengths and weaknesses, what's a strength of RVCC? Well, I might be a little biased, but I think our professors are just wonderful. In coming up with weakness, the top weakness always listed by students is parking at RVCC. So we would come up with a robust list of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and from there try to devise a strategy or strategies, more than one, that help us meet our goals. Now, with any organization, whether it's for-profit or not-for-profit, growth is usually involved, right? So for a retail establishment, increased sales, right? Which might involve expanding our market or expanding just our sales. For a nonprofit like RVCC, what we look at is enrollment, number of credits being taken. So we always want to try and expand that somehow. So just given the examples that I put in for strengths and weaknesses, one of our weaknesses is our parking. Absent additional parking or better parking, how can we grow without burdening our parking situation and making it harder? Well, maybe an option is more online classes, right? So that's kind of how this works. Now let's move on and talk about Michael Porter's generic strategies. They are a differentiation strategy, an overall cost leadership strategy, and a focus strategy. Now, the focus strategy is going to be either a differentiation or an overall cost leadership strategy that concentrates on a specific regional market, product line, or group of buyers. So let's look at some examples and some definitions. A company using a differentiation strategy distinguishes its company and its products from competitors through the quality of its products or services. If they do this successfully, then they're able to charge more money. So some examples: Rolex watches, Mercedes-Benz, Cross pens. These are all high quality items that are expensive. Next, we have an overall cost leadership strategy. You get a competitive advantage by reducing the firm's costs below the costs of your competitors, and that way you can sell the products at lower prices and still make a profit. So this is a company finding a more inexpensive way to do something and passing those savings along to customers. Some examples here are Timex watches, the automobile brand Kia, and Bic pens. So those are inexpensive choices, and they pass those savings along. Now, as I said before, the focus strategy concentrates on a specific regional market, a product line, or a group of buyers. It is either a differentiation focus or it's an overall cost leadership focus. So I just have two examples here. Tag Heuer makes watches, and they are designed and intended for a very specific group of buyers. They are started out as diving watches. I think that's really what they're for. So they're very high quality and very rugged to handle diving and those certain depths in the water, and they are expensive. Hasselblad cameras are designed to a specific group of buyers as well. These are cameras that are aimed towards professionals, professional photographers, not for casual use. So that's an example of a focus strategy. Both of these, unfortunately, are a differentiation focus, but there could be an overall cost leadership focus that is either in a specific regional market. Maybe we create a product that we only sell in a specific regional market. Maybe it's within the United States, or maybe it's in another country, but that would be a cost leadership focus. Porter's generic strategies are business level strategies. They happen at the product level. Now let's shift and look at corporate level strategies. A couple terms I want to make sure we understand. Strategic business units. So each business or group of businesses within an organization is engaged in serving the same markets, customers, or products. So we looked at Yum Brands before, and we can say that KFC is one of their strategic business units, and Pizza Hut is another strategic business unit. Okay, so they serve certain products that differ from each other. And for diversification, this is the number of businesses an organization is engaged in and the extent to which these businesses are related to one another. And we're going to look at that in a minute. But I want to be clear. We don't say that McDonald's is necessarily diversified because they add a new burger to their menu. If McDonald's, buys another company and is in a different business in addition to that. So earlier I gave the example of Mars. They have their candy like M&Ms and Snickers, but they also have pet care. So that's diversification into different businesses. So that's what we're referring to. So we have different choices we can make with our strategies. We can have a single product strategy. We really do one thing. It's very simple. Or we can have a related diversification. This is the epitome of Yum Brands, right? They are all fast food establishments. At the very least, they are food establishments, right? I think the new one, the burger joint, looks more, what do they call it? Fast casual. But those have related that's related diversification, and that can give us some synergy because it is related in some way. Now, with the Yum example, those are all like basically the same type of business, but we can have related diversification based on something else. It doesn't have to be that the products are exactly the same. And then we have unrelated diversification. With unrelated, there is more risk and there can be more return, but it's a little harder to manage those types of diverse businesses. So let's look at some examples here. Single product strategy. We have one product or service, and maybe we sell it in a single geographic market. An example here is WD-40. WD-40 is its own company, and all they make is, you guessed it, WD-40. And then we have related diversification. All right, so we're going to operate in different businesses, and diversification is good because if one business isn't doing well, the other ones might be doing well. We are more diversified. Not all our eggs are in one basket. So we operate in several different businesses, industries, or markets, but somehow these markets, industries, or businesses are linked. There's something about them that gives us this synergy. So there are risks associated with having one product, right? So related diversification helps us overcome that risk. And here are some examples. So Procter & Gamble, they have a common distribution system. I don't know if you're familiar with Procter & Gamble's products, but all the things that they sell can be purchased in supermarkets. So even though they might carry laundry detergent and batteries, there's no necessarily synergy between making laundry detergent and making batteries, but the synergy comes from having the same place for them to be sold, so their common distribution system. With Disney, the brand name, that gives them a lot of synergy. We've talked about Disney before. You put Disney on something and there's name recognition, brand recognition, and it has a certain connotation. With Boeing, there's a common technology. So the businesses that they're in, that common technology is the thread that goes through their businesses, providing them with some synergy. So the advantages of related diversification: it reduces an organization's dependence on any one of its business activities, and it reduces the economic risk along with that. It can reduce our overhead costs because we have economies of scale and economies of scope, meaning so I can have maybe 3 different businesses, but maybe my corporate office handles HR for all of those businesses. So I don't have separate departments at each of those companies. So you can see how I have economies of scale. We can exploit our strengths in more than one business. And then, the bottom line here is that there should be some sort of synergy. Our value as a business together is greater than if these businesses were run separately. Now let's look at unrelated diversification. When we're in multiple businesses that are not logically associated with one another, unrelated diversification does have advantages. When we're in very different businesses, we might see stable performance over time because of the business cycle differences among multiple businesses. Some might do better during really good times and others do better during maybe slower economic cycles. We can allocate our resources to areas with the highest return to maximize our corporate performance. So, we're really thinking here with this kind of diversification, we own several businesses. When one is doing well, we can move those monies to other areas to get their performance up or expand the one that's doing really well. Disadvantages. It's really hard to manage such complexity, to have so many different businesses going on. So sometimes you don't get the performance you expect, and poor performance, it doesn't bode well to investors. And if we fail to exploit any synergies, it can put us at a competitive disadvantage. firms with related diversification strategies have an advantage here because the synergies are easier to come by. The example we had here is for GE, so I'm taking you to GE's website just to give you an idea, if I can, of the different businesses that GE is in. So we can see, and I don't like the way this is showing up on the small screen, but I think it's important, and I think you can get a grasp of how diversified they are. Aviation, this is their jet engines. Okay, so we can see they make commercial engines. Another business that they're in is capital. This is all about financing. These are financing solutions, this division. There is no connection between their financing arm or business and their aviation. They also have renewable energy. So they do these windmills, and you can see they have wind, they have hydro, hybrid, digital and services. So all kinds of things they're in, and they are very divergent. And healthcare. So under each of these, and you can explore it more on your own if it comes up, we can see that they're in many different areas. So the machines they make to help in hospitals and different areas. Okay, so let's go back to the PowerPoints. Now let's look at the ways we can become a diversified firm. As you can see, we have these 4 different diversification alternatives listed. The first that we have here is the development of new products. So we could develop new products that we want to sell for new markets. We can do that all on our own. The next one, vertical integration, I'm going to actually go to the next slide to give you a better explanation here for the last 3. So when we talk about vertical integration, we can have backward or forward vertical integration. This is a replacement of suppliers and customers. So with backward vertical integration, we might start a business that furnishes the resources previously handled by a supplier. The example I always give here is Campbell's Soup. Campbell's puts its soup, most of its soup, in tin cans, and their supplier was the price they were paying to get these tin cans for their soup fluctuated greatly. So they actually did backward vertical integration and started producing them themselves. So they eliminated the supplier. That's an example of backward vertical integration. So backward vertical integration eliminates a supplier. Forward vertical integration gets you closer to your customers. So if we were to begin a business that was previously handled by an intermediary, someone that got between us and the customer, the ultimate customer, then that's forward vertical integration. So we would start a business that used to be handled by an intermediary, and we sell more directly to our customers. So that's forward vertical integration. The other 2 things listed on the previous screen were mergers and acquisitions. So one of the reasons we might do this is maybe we want to expand and offer more products, and it can be a lot quicker instead of designing new products and coming up with new things ourselves. We can acquire a company that's already doing that. This is pretty popular in, the pharmaceutical industry, right? You have these big drug makers, and they acquire smaller startups that might have some new drugs on the market, coming to market that are going to get patents, and that's how they expand their product line. You might acquire complementary products or services linked by some common technology. I think, Google, I think Google's probably the biggest. They buy a lot of smaller companies and bring them into the fold. And then we can also, through these mergers and acquisitions, create or exploit synergies. So these are some ways that we can become diversified, either doing it all on our own, replacing suppliers or getting closer to our customers through starting those kinds of businesses, or merging with companies or acquiring other companies that that can give us our diversification. So if we become diversified, we have to find a way to manage this diversification, and we refer to this as portfolio management techniques, because when we own lots of companies, we call them a portfolio of companies, and we have more than one. So these are the methods that diversified organizations use to make decisions about what businesses they should engage in and how to manage multiple businesses to maximize their performance. The two that we're going to look at here are the BCG matrix, which is the Boston Consulting Group matrix. And we'll look at a visual for this and talk about it a little bit. It's actually, I think it's cute, but you'll see what I mean in a minute. And then we have the GE Business Screen, which is a little more complex. And it's named after GE because GE invented it because of how diversified they are. It is a little more in depth than the BCG matrix. So let's look at the BCG matrix. So this one breaks it into 4 quadrants. So we have these 4 areas, and we rate our businesses based on market growth rate and the relative market share. So this means how much of the market do we have, and it ranges from a low market share to a high market share. High market share could be, and it depends how many different competitors are in the market, how many different products are in the market. High market share could be 50% of the market, right? If there's a lot of people in the market, or it could be even higher than that. Or low, maybe we only have 1% of the market. And the market growth rate is looking at how much is this market going to grow? Are people going to be continuing to buy these products? So we would classify our businesses based on these 2 variables. So this corner here, we have high market share. So we're the most popular, right? We have the market share, but it's not a really growing area. They call these the cash cows. So this would be perhaps a mature market. And we might want to stay in this market until it's not bringing in the cash anymore. Up here, if we have a high market share and it's growing, we call those stars. And that's where you'd ideally like to be, right? Large market share of a growing market, that's perfect. Down here, we have our dogs. They have small market share, and it's not a growing market. These are the businesses we might want to divest, get rid of, because they're not bringing in, there's no growth here, and we don't have a large share of it anyway. And for a diversified company, you can sell off what we're referring to here as dogs, and an individual or a smaller firm might buy it and still be able to be profitable, but it doesn't make sense in our overall portfolio. And lastly, our question marks up here might have a low market share, but it is a growing market. So we're not really sure where this is going to go. And with a portfolio of businesses that can be scattered around these things, our stars and our cash cows might be bringing in some profits, and we might choose to deploy those resources over to some of our question marks to see if we can shift them from here over to the star category and increase their market share. All right, so I guess I like this because it's got these cute, quirky names, but this is the Boston Consulting Group matrix, and this is one way of looking at managing a diverse portfolio of businesses. Now, the GE Business Screen adds another column here. So we have 9 boxes instead of the 4, and it's pretty similar. So the competitive position, this is in contrast to the previous one that was the market share, but that means the same thing, right? Your competitive position includes market share and these things. And then over here is our industry attractiveness. So in the last one, it was just looking at the market growth, but also market size and these variables. So GE does the same thing. They look at these 2 different variables. Well, actually, they're more than just one variable, but these two things, and they map out where their businesses fall. The losers they're going to get rid of. The winners they're going to obviously keep. The question marks they have to make some decisions on. And, these, the same thing. They're producing a lot of profits, but they're not that, maybe not growing and not that attractive, but they're in a good competitive position. So over time, a profit producer might move over to the loser category, right? And eventually we might get rid of it. So this is how a business that has a lot of businesses manages which ones they should hold on to, which ones they should sell off, which ones they should maybe invest more in over time.